Hello, Michael.
Hello, Carl. How are you?
Things are fantastic. Yeah, really good. And I have a question for you. Here's the question.
Okay.
We're just diving right in. We're diving right in. No
Okay. All right.
conversation about.
Game on. Let's go.
Yep, let's go. So advice adherence is something that I've been hearing a lot about lately. Like, how do I get clients to accept my advice? Like, I tell them to do something and they don't do it.
Okay. So how do I get them to adhere to the advice I give? So this is like, was it Moira Summers? Like, how do you make your advice stickier so it
Oh
adheres?
yeah. Yeah, that's actually a really great resource on this topic.
Okay.
But I also think um I don't quite want to go like to the marketing level, but it's like this could be in the early, first or second meeting level of like, here's what I want you to do, and there's an objection. It could
Okay.
also be 5 years in, hey, I really want you to do this, and there's an objection. So just this, and so they're not adhering, advice adherence may be actually no, that's a good word, but I'm particularly talking about objection. Like I'm objecting to that advice.
Is this
Um,
advice or is this, I guess I don't know how far up the stream we're going. Is it objecting to advice or is it like because the client hired me and then they're not taking the advice, or are we all the way up to like, we're trying to get the prospect to become a client and they're objecting and don't want to engage our advice
Well,
service.
that's my favorite topic, right? Like one of my favorite topics of like how to do marketing in a way that people don't object to it. But I kind of want to stick with this, like it's like
Okay.
advice. I've given them advice. And it could
Okay.
be really early, just to be clear. Like this could be really early in a client relationship. In fact, it's really helpful to talk about it very early. Client has feels really good about hiring. You're now telling them what you would do in the early stages, and they object to it. Um, and this is often framed as, because I was just asked this recently, like, where do I go to get overcoming objections training? Because
Yeah.
it's like, remember that was like part of your normal sales training was like,
Well,
okay,
yeah,
here's,
that's why I was wondering because I just when I think overcoming objections, my head goes to some version of sales training with the prospect who's
yeah,
got objections as to why they don't want to hire me. I'm maybe it'll be the point of where you're going. I don't actually know that they're that different at the
that's
end,
kind of what I'm
and
trying. I kind of, we've talked a lot about that sales piece, and I enjoy that. It's where I naturally want to go, but I'm actually quite curious about the same idea. And it could be very early, so it still feels like early sales of a relationship. But as the client, anywhere in that relationship, yeah, overcoming objections training. And I have a very like visceral, distinct reaction to overcoming objections training, but I wanted to hear what you thought first. Like, what do you think about when somebody says, okay, let's give you some training on how to overcome objections?
well, again, I'm slightly stuck only because I hear overcome objections. It's like my head keeps going back to sales training and not necessarily client delivery. When I think of
Well,
client delivery, I just think like frankly, the word that comes to mind is clients just reject your recommendations. Like how to deal with clients who reject the recommendations. I
let me just, maybe I didn't do a great job of framing this. Uh, I think we're always selling.
Okay,
Right.
fair enough.
So yeah. So 5 years in, I notice something about a client relationship that I need to tell them that they should do something different. I have advice, and we all think it's advice, but we've got to sell that advice, right? Like we've got, and hopefully we have some relationship so it doesn't feel like sales. But if somebody objects, and I like easy example, scary market, somebody wants to sell, right? And selling would not be in their best interest. And you have to convince them not to sell. Uh, Trust has never been funded. Way you're giving money to the kids.
Yeah, well, so yes, that hits home for me. Like early on, had a client. I mean, we've all had these clients that just spending way too much supporting her
Perfect.
adult children. I guess it was one was a young adult and the other one was still in college and probably cruising for more support after college, given the trajectory. And it was very unequivocally like just tanking the retirement projections and her ability to retire. And I remember just, we built the plan, all the beautiful projections because they were beautiful, Carl.
I'm
My
sure they were.
plan was beautiful.
I'm sure they were.
Uh, right, beautiful projections where the lines all crashed to the ground in her 70s or 80s, and came with all these projections and just demonstration. Like, if you stay on the path that you're on, this is going to fail. Like, you are going to run out of money that not that far into your retirement. Like, this just isn't going to work the way you're supporting the kids. Like, you just have to dial back how much you're spending on them and how much you're supporting on them. And tried to show it as best I could, and it basically just flopped. Like, I don't know, Sheila like nodded and smiled and seemed reasonably engaged and said, she'll take our recommendations, and then came in 6 months later and literally nothing had changed. Like, not one thing. And I remember, and again, this is, well, for where I was in career, because I think you're now going to go in a very different direction. My first like thought and experience, I mean, I'm probably 28, 29 years old at this point. I'm like 6 or 7 years into the business, was, I clearly didn't explain that well enough. Like,
Mm,
I didn't make the case
mm,
effectively enough. I mean, like,
mm,
she's clearly still failing. This isn't going to work.
mhm.
And I started taking a hard look. Like, should I have shown the numbers differently? Like, should I have framed it differently? Did I need a more dire looking scenario to like really hit the point home? Because maybe it just didn't land. Like, yeah, going broke 30 years from now is still so far off. Like,
Right.
she wasn't that concerned yet. I
Yeah.
so like I took a lot of it on myself to say, clearly I need to get better in either how I explain this to clients or how I illustrate or visualize or show it to clients, because Sheila clearly didn't get it. I was like, okay, that's on me. I didn't blame myself. Like, I didn't blame Sheila. Like, I blame me. I didn't do a good enough job in bringing this
Right.
to her. But it was like I was still very focused on how else could I have delivered this that maybe would have made it hit home.
Would you use the word prove? Like, how else could I prove to her that
Yeah.
this was right? Yeah.
Yes. I think very, very much so. I mean, I was a debater in college, so there
I
is a
mean, this all
like
makes sense.
I literally like I must win my case, and I
Right.
clearly failed to convince the judge and jury
Right. Right.
because she came in 6 months later having not acted in a persuaded manner. So I
Yeah.
obviously failed to prove my case. Now
Yeah.
I think about it a little bit differently today with more years of experience doing this and some different experiences down the line. But just like as you're framing up the scenario, I mean that's where my head goes. Like, I can see
Yeah.
like the conference room that I was in, because I actually remember
Right.
being a little bit demoralized that like
Right.
she came back in like just nothing. Like, so tell me what's going on. Like, did you have some conversation with the kids? She's like,
Right.
no, no, I
Right.
decided not to. I'm like, but you're gonna go broke. She's like, yeah, I decided not to. I'm like, did
Yeah.
you miss the part about going broke?
Right. I mean, that's a really great story because that's exactly what I'm pointing to of like um how demoralizing it can be. They just don't and look, that could be demoralizing because I didn't get them as a client, but it could also what we're talking about here more is like demoralizing because you just want deeply for this to work, like
I
you
like
don't
there's nothing worse as a financial advisor than having a client run out of money on your watch.
yeah. Yeah. I was just
Like,
thinking
there's
it's
like no greater indictment of your failure as a professional.
yeah,
That's
I was
maybe a
just
little harsh. I'm not trying to dunk on anyone who's
yeah,
actually had that happen to them
yeah,
like that. I mean, at least like that was the script in my head, and I still feel like it's a pressure that a lot of us feel. Like, just
agreed.
you never want someone to run out on your watch.
Yeah. Yeah, this brings up a lot of interesting questions that I wanted to get to because I think the idea of like how could I been more effective in my presentation of this is really a good place to go because it's different than they just don't follow advice. Like that was very different. Like you took it on yourself, which I think is cool. And I think
Yeah,
you may have been,
it may have been just I want to note that like as some folks know, I was a psych major before I came into the financial planning world, and just I do find this interesting. In fact, in planning world, um, there's a segment of folks who view it as if you give the advice and it does and the client doesn't take it, they're bad clients,
right.
right? I only want to work with clients who take my advice the first time I give it to them. Is something I know some advisors do. And like I don't want to fault that. There are certain expediencies when you work with clients who take your advice the first time that you give it. But like the psychology framing of this, like how they tend to view it when you come from a therapy end is if the patient doesn't take your recommendations, that's you. That's not them. Because see, there's kind of a presumption in psychology that like they came in because they had problems. If they were really good at self-correcting their behavior on their own, they might not be in your office. Like by the time they're there, almost by definition, they need help. They need some outside intervention to change the course that you're on. And it's your responsibility to figure out how to do that and how to
Yeah,
have a positive intervention. I mean, you hear like psychology have to talk to the words of interventions
sure.
to change the behavior. So I carried that for better or worse to the financial planning world, which means I've always kind of had this mindset of like clients who don't take my advice doesn't make them bad clients. Like it means I got it wrong.
Yeah. No, I think that's,
I didn't prove my case, at least as I
yeah.
framed it then.
Yeah, and I think what you were also pointing to a little bit earlier in terms of its slightly different direction, it's just another layer. It's just a layer, a little layer deeper, which isn't, it's not the layer of like, what facts and figures, how could I have presented it better? It's just one layer deeper, which is, and this is where I've tried to rewire my brain, and I think it works in client scenarios, it works at home, it works with friends. Like if there's some objection, I don't need more overcoming objection training, right?
Oh, I like
I need better listening training, right? So if what I like to feel, what I want to see happen, and I know those of you who are watching the video can see me trying to do the switch in my head. What I like to see that like rewiring in my own head is if I've spent all this time researching some, you hired me for this. This is a little different than in a friendship because nobody hired you for it and probably nobody's even asking. But if
right.
somebody's asked you for your advice and you've thought really carefully about it and you're really feel good about it and you did some diagnosis, right? So then you write this beautiful prescription and then they don't follow it. What I like to have happen in my head is like, oh, I must have missed something in the diagnosis.
Mm,
And like where you went is I
yes.
must have missed something in the presentation, which I think is also great. I think they go together, right? But I think it's like, what question didn't I ask? So like Sheila, it must have and some of these are not solvable, right? Like I was where my head went earlier on was like I can only think of three clients that I had to fire, and they were all because, I've given you this advice. We've talked about it 3 or 4 times. You're not doing it. And then I mean, what I wanted to say was, I actually, I might have even said this on one, but I only one, and I can remember exactly who it was. I don't want to play on a losing team. And I can see this is going to end badly. But the softer way of saying that is like, I've given you this advice. We've talked about it. We've had a lot of discussion, which I want to talk about in a minute. Like I've understood everything. It's not working. Then there's clearly no reason for you to be paying me for this advice. Like let's get you to someplace
Yeah.
else. But what I want to talk real quickly about is the understanding part. Like the switch in the brain of like, okay, Sheila, I've and this is a conversation I had multiple times. Sheila, we gave you this advice and then we noticed that nothing really happened differently. What are we missing?
Yeah.
Like how can we be helpful? What are we missing? And you can even say like, I'm pretty confident that this is going to end poorly,
Yeah.
but you're making a slightly different decision. So I'm trying to understand it. help me understand. Like that level, that's kind of last ditch effort kind of communication, but it's important.
Well, I look, I would very much agree. I mean, I think that's why, as I was trying to frame it, like this was, this was me almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Because yes, I would approach this conversation differently now. I'm still going to do my best to win and prove my case because the debating thing dies hard.
Right.
But yes, there comes a point where now my questions to Sheila at that 6 month mark would very much be along the lines of, so we talked about some stuff when you were in last and you haven't moved forward with any of it. So I have to presume that you didn't really feel like my advice was on the mark. So I'm so sorry that I clearly I missed something. Help me understand more what I missed. Like what's part of the evaluation in your head that I didn't realize because I clearly missed something in how you're prioritizing these things.
Yeah.
And ask a question like that. And look, with I would say both with wisdom of hindsight and candidly, like now being in a stage where I have three children that I have been parenting for many, many years. When back then, like I was a single 20 something that had not had those, had not had children or responsibilities and what goes with them. Like if I honestly reflect back, I'm pretty sure Sheila's answer would have been, uh, I would do anything for my kids. And if going broke in my 70s is what it takes, I'm so glad I made it to my 70s
Yeah.
before I ran out. And then if I asked her why she hired us, it was not to tell her that she was spending too much money on her kids because I'm pretty sure she knew like that could not have actually been news to her in the first place. I'm pretty sure in retrospect that the reason we really got hired was I know I'm going to go broke doing this, make the money last as long as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's,
I
look,
think that's why we were really hired in retrospect. Like I didn't know how to have that conversation or get there. Again, as you said, now I'd try to be like nicely much more direct. Like, I'm so sorry we gave these recommendations and you haven't moved forward with any of it. I must have missed something. Help me understand further, and maybe I would have gotten some of that. Or now I'd probably start to say like you came in and hired me for advice, and you haven't moved forward with any of it. So I just love to know, like, what do you feel the value of this relationship is? Like, you're still coming in and clearly doing something helpful for you,
yeah.
but it's not the recommendations I gave in the plan last time. So what is it that you're looking for me to do to
Yeah.
help you here? And again, I think her answer probably would have been, I just want you to make the money last as long as it can because I don't have any intention of changing the course I'm on with my kids. They're my kids. I'm willing to lose everything for them. And,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
That's really interesting. It's
that
interesting
gets into all
even.
sorts of personal values for some of us about the trade-offs that we make
Sure.
for
Yeah.
ourselves, our kids. Like, not my money, not my place.
Well, and yeah, frankly, keep your values off their plans, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's exactly right. And it's interesting even hearing you talk about that. And I'm going to sort of ask listeners if they noticed it. Like it's interesting the level of empathy that I felt, as soon as we started to understand what was really going on in somebody else's head in this, hypothetical slash real example, suddenly you're like, oh, how can I be helpful with that? How can I be helpful? And so I think this overcoming objections, like when there's an objection, having giving it another shot, right? Like playing around a little bit. And at a certain point, you reach the level where you've got to say, as simple as like, hey, we gave you some advice, you didn't do it. What's going on? Like that simple. And
Yeah.
the one thing I would just point to is being really
But I would note in that vein, sorry, just like I have to
yeah,
interject quickly. Like it's, you know, you didn't take our advice, what's going on, I find makes people really defensive really quickly.
yeah,
That I come from like, you know, I provided some recommendations that you haven't implemented. Clearly, my advice wasn't on target.
Yeah. Yeah.
Help me understand what I missed. Right. So like it's all my
Yeah.
fault. You're the
Yeah.
client. Educate me. I obviously screwed up, right? So like I don't want you to be defensive. I just want to actually get a good conversation. But like
Yeah.
I screwed up. You tell me what I missed.
Well, and that's kind of what I wanted to point to was that I think this is a really great conversation. One thing you're really good at is not taking things personally. I've watched you be in relatively heated discussions and you're not attached necessarily. I mean, you might be deeply attached to winning the argument.
Wait, what's the saying? Strong opinions loosely held.
Loosely held, yeah. Like you might be deeply attached to winning the argument, but as soon as it's done, you're like, let's move on. Some people get a little bit more attached, and so even in the language I used, which is like what's going on,
Mhm.
and in the language you used, which is I must have made a mistake. There's danger in both of that set of language. Like the I must have made a mistake could put somebody on the defensive from the perspective of like, oh, like you're it's not passive aggressive. It's not that's not at all the word. It's like so I think there's a like what we're really trying to do is just an objective statement of fact.
Yeah.
And and then one of the best versions of this I ever heard was like a statement of fact, the fact pattern, which again, remember, like as soon as we start talking about facts, we've got
Yeah.
perception. Like it's so hard. But an object as close as we can get to an objective statement of fact, like we met, I understood this to be the challenge we were trying to solve for. I provided these suggestions. And then what happened next, right? Like it didn't get implemented. And I'm trying to understand why.
Yeah.
And my first assumption, still at the language, my first assumption would be that I just must have missed something. Like what did we miss? How can I be helpful here? What would be helpful? Right? Like that's I'm not sure the language is exactly right that I just used, but that's the
Yeah.
tone and you're pointing at the sorry, that's the direction and you're pointing at the same direction. And so but I just think that's so much better than, oh yeah, here's another fact and figure, and here's a research report, and here's 12
Which is
more.
still so my natural go-to.
Sure. Sure, but it doesn't,
I
in
can
the
make another
end,
spreadsheet that shows you growing broke if that would help.
yeah, this was one of those sketches that we've got like a lot of advisors ended up using, which was the first a hug. I think we called it Scary Market's hug. Hugs. And the hug was a metaphor, probably, which is like, yeah, the facts and figures are important, but probably after the empathy, after the understanding, right? After the hug, And I think your example of Sheila's perfect because I literally was like, wow, I can feel the change in empathy when we understood really what was going on. And now I can be helpful. And I have a decision to make. Do I want to continue to help? And in that case, I deeply do, right?
I I would make some distinction though that so like scary market scenarios start
Sure.
with the hug to me is one thing, right? Because I mean, if someone's really in freak out mode, right? Just like they're in amygdala hijack mode, like their brain literally cannot process reasoning
Yeah,
when you're in
fair
an
enough.
emotional hijack. Like your best case scenario is just help someone come down, give them a hug, try to help settle them, get them back to some rational, to like some state where the rational brain even re-engages, and then maybe you can try to have the rational conversation. Whereas I look at Sheila's scenario like a little bit differently. I mean, yes, the still try to find the empathy to connect, but to me, like it's not because I'm trying to get out of emotional hijack and into the part where we can have the conversation. It's I just view it much more fundamental. Like you clearly have a different set of priorities than the ones that I assumed. Right? I assumed one of your priorities was not run out of money, and it turns out that was not the right priority
Love that.
because you're actually willing to do that. Now,
Yeah.
as a financial advisor that doesn't want anyone to run out of money on my watch, like I just sort of assumed that not go broke was one of your priorities, but that was probably actually wrong for Sheila. The priority was, how long can I make this last? Because I really am willing to give everything for my kids. And I just want to do that for them as much as possible.
Yeah.
So yes, all sorts of parenting and other advice that might not be the most bad, that might not be the best enabling
Right.
behavior for
Beyond our
Sheila's
scope.
children. Like I was not hired to be her marriage and family therapist. I was hired to be your financial advisor, and the part that I didn't get to, that again, just I can see so much clearer now with hindsight, is her priorities didn't start with run out. Like her priorities were make the money last, but not because she didn't want to run out. She just wanted to last as long as it could before she spent herself down to zero supporting her kids.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good point. And I think the place we end is the same, which is
Yeah.
if an objection comes up, let's first ask questions about what we could do differently. And almost feel like we could work our way down. Like, could I have presented that differently? Did we not, were
Was
we
there a
not,
better spreadsheet?
yeah, were we
As
not,
long as it's on your checklist, I'll be
yes,
happy.
of course. Is there a better spreadsheet? Did we not communicate it clearly? And then I think you get to the spot at the bottom of like, did we just fundamentally miss something?
Yeah.
Did we not ask the right questions to begin with? Were we solving the wrong problem? Have we not clarified with them? Did we not prescribe? Sorry, did we not diagnose thoroughly?
So yes, I agree with, I think the asterisk. I would probably flip the order.
I think you're right. As I was doing it, I was like, no, you're right. Like, did we miss something?
Yeah, because like if you're in the right neighborhood, people connect the dots about what they want to do. Like if you're in the right neighborhood of their priorities, they just ask the follow-up questions to figure out how to do the thing that they want to do that you're telling them they can do if it wasn't entirely clear. When the recommendations are made and seem to be taken and then nothing happens, I find like it's almost never because I just didn't present it well.
I
Like
agree.
I missed something in the priorities much further upstream.
Yeah, I
To
agree.
your point and framing around this, that I think that's where it really usually lies.
Yeah, I agree. I think just objection equals probably miss something. Like objection equals listen a little better. Objection equals ask another question.
So then the one other piece I want to ask to this just before we wrap up, can is it like same thing when we are in a sales prospecting
I think it's
mode?
even I think it's like so my favorite person who does any work on sales training is Blair Enns.
Yep.
And Blair's new book, The Four Conversations, he one distinction he makes is between expert, and I think you would love this, Michael. Like between there, you feel like there's this dividing line between expert you and sales you.
Okay.
And
Yep.
expert you, you're in love with, and sales you, you like abhor. Like I don't like sales. Like
Oh
it's
well, yeah, coming from the advisor, and yes, like
yes, yeah.
I just want to hang out and be an expert and have everyone take my advice. Actually getting clients was really unpleasant.
Yeah, and I think what Blair is pointing out is that you can sell like an expert, and that
Mm.
the really without spending a whole time our whole without getting into it deeper, it's really exactly what we've talked about, which is, and I remember saying this to prospective clients and especially to centers of influence specifically. I can think of two CPAs and a trust attorney where, after a couple of years of trying, like maybe sending them great clients and keep in mind, I was sending them great clients because I knew they would do a great job, not necessarily to get clients back, but because I knew that was just something I was hoping for. And after a couple of years of not getting it, I finally sat down with him and I was like, listen, one of his names was Bob. I remember saying to Bob, I was like, Bob, I am positive if you knew what I did for clients, you would more aggressive. I mean, you would be you not only would you be sending people to me, you would aggressively be looking for the opportunity because and I'd feel the same way about you. Like I sometimes I sell you harder than I sell me. And I remember just saying, look, I'll take as long as you want to understand that because I know it's true. And that to me was the feeling in my bones with clients of like, okay, if you don't come to a meeting, or especially if we've had a first meeting and I've given you like the whatever your pitch is, like mine was this one page plan, right? Like whatever your pitch is for the move forward suggestion, right? And you don't do it, I'm definitely gonna have a conversation of like, hey, I felt like this is a really good fit. I know we could make an impact. I must have missed something. Like, what did I miss? Was it the way something about the way I communicated? Did I not ask the right question? Because remember, Russ Allen Prince's research in private client attorney,
Yep.
he said after they did that whole survey of people who didn't implement suggestions from an estate planning attorney. So it was high net worth people, had the estate planning done, paid for it, didn't do it. They asked him why. And it was 90+% said this did not reflect what I wanted.
Yep.
That to me has been haunting for whatever, as long as I've 15, 20 years of
Yep.
like, yeah. So if you've objected, I must have just missed something. Because if you knew what I could do for you, I'm not going to say that out loud, but that's how what I'm feeling. And if you knew what I could do for me, you'd be lining up out the door. So what is it about the way I'm communicating, the way I'm talking, the way I'm presenting it that's getting in the way of that outcome? That's how I think about that sales part of it.
Very cool. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carl.
Cheers, Michael. See ya.
Thank you.